so as soon as the camera goes on, then we're off. Just let me know.
Yeah.
Oh, we're on?
Yeah.
Okay, right, thanks very much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Ventnor Town Council meeting being held at the Free School on the 13th of September 2021. The first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any, please, Clark?
Just from Councillor Ian Bond, who's on holiday.
Okay, lucky him, thank you very much. Second item on the agenda are declarations of interest. Do any members have declarations of interest on the agenda items this evening? Take that as a no. Next are the minutes of the previous meeting, the Town Council meeting on the 9th of August. If anybody has any comments, please let me know. Otherwise, we will take them as read.
Yes, just a comment on the 31 bus. It says that Councillor Mark Jeffries said that people were concerned about how long the service would be available. I also asked the Untitled Chair, could you give an assurance that the service would start as soon as possible?
The clerk has noted your comment, so that will be adjusted accordingly. Yeah, I do recall the conversation, so I concur completely with that. Okay. Will you approve the proposal for the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting on 23rd of August. They're there for information only. And item number 4 is PTEC planning application. For the information for those of you that are joining us virtually, we have just had a 40-minute discussion with members of the public and 2 representatives of PTEC. And I'll hand over now to Councillor Phil Warren, who is the chair of the Planning Committee, and he can give an introduction to this item.
Okay, so I'd just like to remind all those present who are going to discuss this particular item that normally individual planning applications would come to the Planning Committee. There's 5 members of the committee. We discuss and make recommendations that go back then to our White Council, who make their informed decision, taking into account any comments that we forwarded in terms of our decision. The outcome of the meeting tonight is to make recommendations. We cannot make final decisions, we cannot implement the recommendations that we make, so it's important to know that. We'll have, I think there's 10 of us by 9, can't count. Anyway, an increased number rather than 5 of councillors who can discuss the issues for tonight. The important thing is that comments made have to relate to planning regulations and rules, and these are described as material considerations, and we were circulated by the town clerk a brief resume. It's not comprehensive, of essentially those items that are considered to be material considerations. So I hope everybody has seen those. As the outcome of the public forum earlier, I made a note of 8 key points that are relevant to coming to formulate an opinion at this meeting of the extended planning committee, if you like. First, to relate to loss of amenity, should the development go ahead as planned, as proposed. And remember, this is for the siting revised plan for the substation in Flowsbrook. The first 2 relate to loss of amenity, that's visual amenity and recreational amenity. Possibly an impact on access to the site, proximity to the proposed development on the Red Squirrel site, which is the proximity of house number 3, we had a response to that, effect on wildlife, transformer noise, the height of the fence, and that really relates, I think, partly to loss of visual amenity, and also another point, the possible breaching of seed fences. So those are the 8 key points that came out from the public forum. I just wondered if anyone sitting around the group now, the councillors, wish to comment on any of those issues or extra issues that they think might be pertinent to the explanation, to this application.
Well, so I'll come first actually. I can't see those 8 point field do much damage at all personally. The wildlife, that's always an interesting one because you can reload and recite them temporary. I've done that on building sites. I also noticed in some comments, going back in comments, that you've got to bear in mind that site is already part of the industrial site with the water board there. And the water board actually does have hazardous material in it, really. It's very, very difficult, really, to know what the noise is going to be anyway to finish up with because of weather conditions. But I personally think we should go, we've got to look forward. We're all asking for more electricity. As I understand on the first survey, the cabling, they found that the easiest place to bring a cable up over a cliff at Flowersbrook, really. And though, yes, anything like this is going to affect a certain amount of people and a certain amount of bits and pieces, really, but and wildlife to a point, but we've got to move forward. We're all asking for more electric, we're asking for electric cars. It's got to go somewhere, and that is part of the industrial state already. I can't see, if you look at the site, it's not going to take a lot of community, lots of community away area at all. Really. The only slight point, which is the highway safety, there's some big stuff going in there, so that will have to be thought out, and no doubt will. And I noticed one of the comments went on about where would you find a lorry heavy enough to bring the transformer in. Well, we've got an 80-ton trailer from John Pett on the Isle of Wight already, and the heavy equipment would be surely would be road closures and done at night. So all these things, as I see it, in the construction side, are easy to get over. Then we mentioned about the trees, the tree roots. That can be got over by taking the foundations down lower. Whatever trees you can put there, you find out how deep the roots go and the foundations get absorbed. So personally, my personal opinion, I'm for it because we need to move forward. That's my personal opinion.
Anyone else? Brian?
I take a different view. I support the residents in their objection to this for the 8 points that you've just listed. I mean, you've concisely listed all the points which I see are very negative points, particularly the one which is affecting the landscape, because it is a pristine pleasure area. Well, that's a very important aspect to preserve. I'm also very concerned about the remediation. It's not a planning matter, but I would like, if the planners do go ahead and approve this, they've got to make sure that the remediation is covered very well, because that is going to be an expensive process to bring a pristine leisure area back to its normal state. So I would record that I'm against approval of this scheme.
I also share Councillor Lucas's concerns. In particular, there seems to me to be a lot of issues with noise, access, and everything, and also share the concern with how close in the proximity this is to the actual development of Red Squirrel. I should certainly be against this.
Steve?
Again, I'm just going to, I want it noted actually that I agree with my fellow councillors, Jeffries and Lucas here. I am going to side with the residents. I think their opinions are very valid, and in fact I actually share them myself. But I also want it noted that this is not against PTEC at all. By the very nature of what I do for a living, and by the absolute core of me, I want to bring carbon emissions down. It is an absolute major crisis. So picking up what Councillor Toogood is actually saying is yeah, if not here, where? But I do believe absolutely wholeheartedly that this is the wrong location. It has to fit in with what local people want and desire. This is a tremendous beauty spot. It's used by everyone in Ventnor. It brings in lots and lots of tourists, and I think that any blot on the landscape is not acceptable. And the further point that I'd like to make is with any development like this, is that any company that's going to do this fantastic work, and it is fantastic work and it's vitally needed work, that you need to work more in cooperative partnership with parish, town and county councillors. I know that there's a myriad of information that's out there, but it does take a lot of going through, and some councillors actually do work full time. So you know, to actually understand the breadth and gravity of what you're actually proposing is quite a feat. So I would like to see more partnership working. But it's not. But we don't want this kind of initiative. It's just this is the wrong location. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. John?
I must admit I came to this meeting with the feeling that there may well be a hint of NIMBYism in this, but I wholeheartedly support the residents in their application with their reservations. They've articulated their points very clearly. They've clearly done a great deal of research, and from what I've heard from PTEC, there are too many unresolved questions. The application for me is far too vague. The noise aspect is completely unresolved. I am not 100% convinced that the environmental impact is valid. I know companies will get their experts in to do their environmental assessments for them, and sometimes these things are not done as thoroughly as they might be. That I'm not saying that it's not the case, but I personally, if this was going to go forward, I would want to get somebody outside of the company to carry out an environmental assessment on this area. The noise, again, is horrible. There's certainly going to be overshadowing on the red squirrel site by the first part of the winter. So I don't see this going forward. From my point of view, I do wholeheartedly support PTEC's plans for helping us produce more electricity, but not at this site. It needs to be somewhere else.
Councillor, anyone else wish to speak?
Well, as the proper chair, sorry, as the proper chair of the meeting, then I will. I'll ask somebody to make a proposal. We'll look for a proposal in a second. Phil, you'd like to speak?
First, I'm deliberately going last because I didn't want to influence discussion at all.
Certainly, Phil. So please speak to the.
And I had written down my concerns before the meeting. I spent a week going through a lot of documentation. And in fact, my concerns are completely mirrored by the 8 concerns that have been raised and that I've noted. I have concerns about loss of amenity, both visual and recreational, for the reasons given earlier in the forum. It is an important recreational area, and the importance and use of it is tranquility. And my belief is, whatever's done, it will disturb that tranquility. So whether you're talking about recreation or mental health needs and escape for people, there's lots of reasons for preserving the tranquility. Although the site is not in an area of outstanding natural beauty, it's just outside. The way to view the local environment, in my view, is not just strictly locally. The corridor that runs along the undercliff is from Bond Church all the way through St Catherine's. I don't want to be too anecdotal. I've sat on the benches many times in that field, enjoyed the tranquility and visual aspects. But I've walked the length many times from St Catherine's to Bond Church, just marvelling at the fact there's a hawk following all the way and will fly and hunt along the whole length of that green corridor. Yes, there have been detailed surveys done both for dormice, squirrels, bats, soworms, and also wall lizards. A lot of it is now retrospective. It's going back quite a few years. Things may not change that much, but I'd like to see more current surveys that are more relevant to the entire area. Noise levels, I'm not an expert, and I think that has to be revisited and justified that noise levels would be adequate should this proposal go ahead. One key thing on the plans is that there are two laydown areas where equipment will be left as it's brought on site, and also facilities are provided for work people. There's a laydown area 1 and 2. One is to the west on the Red Squirrel area, which could be difficult, possibly. But of the two, that would be the one I'd suggest, because the other one is going to take up more than half of all of the Cloudbrook green rather than the green area. It will be massive. That's not been raised, but that's a key point, I think, as well. And the final thing that was raised, and really it was flagged in my mind earlier this week when the CLERKS circulated a statement from the Environment Agency about flood defences for the Isle of Wight. Approximately, the figures are rough in my head, £76 million will be allocated over 6 sites. Ventnor is one of the 4 priority sites. And the key locations will be at West Bond Church, Ventnor and Castle Cove, where there are considered to be severe risks for the coastal defences. With climate change, these will be reviewed and bolstered on an ongoing programme in the future. And because Castle Cove is highlighted, this has to be an essential dialogue that must happen between the potential developers and this potential development with the Environment Agency, looking at risk to sea defences. Overall, the Ventnor statement is that 3,000 properties will be protected by those 3 key areas along the coast. I'm not saying that Castle Cove protects 3,000 properties, but the sea defences there will protect a proportion of those. And I cannot see evidence of that in the documentation. This current new proposal that's been raised. Those were my views, and so I would raise an objection to this particular proposal. So that's my view.
Okay, I have a question for the clerk, actually, if I may. Of course, under normal circumstances, the planning committee doesn't have a proposer and a seconder. They just arrive at a decision either to support or not to support. Would you like a proposer and a seconder, or a formal?
Motion from here.
It does, because we're in a different circumstance. So in that case, I'm looking for a proposer to oppose this application. Sorry?
I propose that this council does not support this planning application and lists the 8 items that we've discussed as needing to be resolved as being our reason for rejection.
Okay, a simple list of the 8, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And Councillor Phil wants a second. Okay, and a show of hands on that, please. So, yes, all except neither Julie nor myself. Okay, thank you, Phil. Thank you all very much for attending this evening. You're very welcome to stay if you wish, or get on. It's 8 o'clock exactly. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, thank you all very much for that. Item number 5 on the agenda is the finance report. So I'll hand straight over to the clerk for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Balance is at 31st of August, 364,802. Both accounts reconciled to that date. During August, the Town Council paid £61,095. That included 14,208. A once a year payment, in this case made to Focus Plumbing and Heating for maintenance agreement for the wall-gate hand washing machines in public toilets on 11 of the Island Town Parish Council's public toilets. This is an initiative of Ventnor Town Council that started when public toilets were passed over to Town Parish Council by the Isle Council, because grouping into a single contract produced a significant saving compared with individual Town Parish Councils making their own arrangements. That contract has been with Wargate for the last 4 years. They proposed a price increase of 30% for 21-22, so we asked Focus Plumbing and Heating, who they've worked with us for the annual Legionella inspections, and we have done them extremely efficient and well equipped. We asked them for a quotation which was accepted both by us and the other Town Parish Councils, and we are now collecting back the elements of that overall £14,000 price, and from the other 10, leaving us with the balance. And so that we know the amount that's due at the end of this £44,000. Receipts in August, 11,474. And in the 5 months of the financial year to date, payments in the period have been £3,872 over budget, and receipts over that period were £4,362 more than budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, as always, for putting this in front of us, Clerk. Does anybody have any questions? Please, Joe.
Please, yeah. What was the saving on the quote, David?
On the quote,
I'll go for war game, it's
nearly 4,000.
as much as I don't. Excellent. Really well covered.
So £4,000 annually to Ventnor Town Council by virtue of entering into that
No,
contract.
it's £4,000 for all 11.
For all, yeah. That sounds more like it. Does anybody have any further questions about the finance reports?
No.
Then I'll be looking for a proposer and a seconder, please. It's proposed by Councillor Steph Toogood, and seconded by Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor.
Item number 6, IT systems upgrade. Yeah, I was quite interested to see this, and it's been a long time since I've seen the words Windows 7 written down anywhere. I'm quite astonished that some computers are still using Microsoft Office 2010. But I've got to say, you're doing a very good job in there, managing to struggle along with that. So I had a good read through the report. It's not my area of expertise whatsoever. Perhaps another councillors around the table do have some comments on this. The proposal is to upgrade the systems all the way to Windows 10 to improve security and retain the supports and improve the longevity by replacing the old-fashioned slow hard drives. And it's moving onto the cloud as well, isn't it? Yeah, to move the IT systems into the cloud in parallel with Office 365 subscriptions details above. So the overall cost to the council will be £338.20 per month, and a one-off cost of £1,470 to perform the transfer.
Sorry, do we actually get rid of the animal inside the door? Or we still need to keep the big machine there? Big computer inside the door and then the box.
That's a good question. So currently the town council runs a large server, which is a rather outdated piece of equipment, and it has been suggested before that by moving onto the cloud, we would then no longer require that piece of equipment. Are you able to answer that, David?
What's the question?
We still want that bit of equipment. We won't. Okay, we'll rent it as an office, can't we? Well, that's good news, actually. That alleviates our water problem, doesn't it? We've worked down here over the years. That's really good news.
Sorry, just to further that, but we will still have to have the equipment that directs all the Ethernet ports in the building, but the server, which is the actual expensive bit that's not protected by the rain cover, will be gone.
Yes, can't have the room back.
No space for another toilet there.
Okay, that's good news. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any further? John, please.
Yeah. It's not going to be Windows 10, is it? It's going to be Windows 11. Isn't it Windows 11 come October?
Not yet.
Not yet. Well, I've been told by Microsoft that by Windows 10 won't be valid at the end of this month. They will no longer be doing upgrades.
The Windows 10 has a service life of another half a decade yet.
Does it?
Yeah, it continues to receive
just
updates for quite a while.
them telling Hawkins and trying to get it. Okay, fair enough.
Can I ask about security? We read recently some horrific stories about people being ransomed, etc. Are you happy that we're taking the correct degree of protection against hackers and anybody interfering with the system?
Are you happy for me to answer that, Chair?
Yes, I'm happy for that. Yes, better you than me.
In short, White Computers absolutely know what they're doing. They offer as part of that £338.20 a month what they call dark web monitoring, which will protect us from as much hacking as you can be protected from. With regards to any other sort of threats, the upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10 will protect us predominantly because it will continue to get the service upgrades directly from Microsoft. So yes, I'm happy with that we're safe on that.
Okay, thank you.
I saw a mention in here that the 365 subscription would be available to councillors as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we can initially it will be the 365 will be linked to the emails directly, but that can be upgradable to get the full Office suite if you choose to do so. Yeah.
Okay, but so those licenses do become available for us potentially. Yeah. Okay. Can you give us an idea of how many engagements with White Computers you have per year? Are you on the phone to them on quite a frequent basis?
Anytime a new email account needs setting up, we're probably at 4 or 5 a month at the very least.
At the very least, okay. Okay. So I'll move to the recommendation. The recommendation is to authorise this upgrade, like I say, which will cost £338.20 per month for a one-off payment of £1,470. Would somebody like to propose this? I have a proposal from Steve.
I'd like to second it, please. There's nothing about computers. I'll second it.
And a show of hands, please.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so we unanimously would like to move away from Windows 7. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 7, car park management. So if you cast your minds back to last month, I updated the council on the discussions that and the meetings that have been had with myself and the clerk and Phil Jordan and the relevant Isle of Wight council officers regarding Ventnor Town Council's proposal to take over management of the additional 4 car parks. The most pertinent point coming out of that was the Isle of Wight Council's reticence to entertain that proposal. From that meeting, you'll recall Councillor Ian Bond suggested that we discuss with other town and parish councils in a similar situation to see if we could find a more united front on that. as David can update us if he chooses to, there hasn't been any response from the Isle of Wight Council. There's no further updates from them regarding the core question. And the core question outstanding from us is if they would be willing to provide a written response to the business case that has been forwarded to them by the Town Council. And if they would assess which advantages listed in the Parks-based consulting report might be delivered, because they did point out a number of things that where they said they could work with us, but we're still awaiting a reply from them. For the other matter, I can quickly report on the meeting that I had. I met with the chair of Freshwater, Sandown and Newport. Had a very cordial meeting. We were all fully understanding the rationale of wishing to take more local control of the car parks, not because it's a money maker, we're well aware of that, but because we believe that with that micromanagement of the car parks we can serve our respective towns better. So all attendees were on the same page, you could say, about that. The 3 other chairs wished to go back to their respective councils and discuss the matter with them. Once they've discussed the matter with them, then they'll have a mandate, and then they will be willing to discuss further. But they were all a bit reticent about talking too much on the matter, as they weren't representing their councils per se. So, does anybody have any comments on that matter? Okay. So, in that case, the next steps there, I'm awaiting word from those chairs, and hopefully they will go to their councils. Hopefully they will all have a mandate to continue those discussions, and then we can start to actually look for solutions. And in the meantime, we can hope that the Isle of Wight Council will get back to us as well with some points for us to work towards. Item number 8 is the number 31 bus. So again, you'll recall from the last meeting, we discussed the number 31 bus, and the working group, I believe, has met twice since then. The working group have arrived at, I won't say conclusion, we've arrived at some kind of conclusion that the town will be very well served by voluntary service. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of voluntary services which are running up and down the country, including at least 2 on the Isle of Wight. I have spoken to the people who run the Wroxall service, and I've also spoken to people who run the Fit bus, and the advantages to those services are very, very clear to see. But what we need to do, what I believe that we need to do, is as a council we need to approach the general public, and we need to gauge the public enthusiasm for that service. We also need to look for champions. Now, the proposal from the working group is actually to, we have a form of words prepared, is to take that form of words and to put it onto the popular Facebook group, the Ventnor notice board, also for the clerk to put that into his newsletter and to distribute it by email. And this form of words basically gives a short explanation of where the council is now and where we would like to be and one possible means of getting there. It was discussed and it was decided that before anything as described is put onto social media or is distributed, that decision should come back to the full council. So firstly, so that you can critique the idea, and secondly, so that you don't suddenly have a surprise when you're looking through Facebook sometime and you see quite a lengthy post talking about the potential for a voluntary bus service. So I'm looking for comments on that, please. Right.
I'm actually speaking to someone about this today. An elderly gentleman, he's 90 years old. He travels into town from Castle Close every week, go in, do a bit of shopping and sort of come back. And he obviously relies on that 31 bus service. He was quite concerned that it wasn't going to get going again. So I'm very, very pleased I'll be able to inform him that we are doing everything we can to actually get a service remitted.
Yes, and we are making a push, and as I have discussed, as I've mentioned a couple of times at full council, certainly I have a pretty high commitment. But it is also important to note for the public record that the numbers do speak to for themselves. The number of regular users we think is hovering around about a dozen, and the overall subsidy, the net subsidy, is around about £6,000. So we do have to keep that in mind. I have identified a number of users, including the gentleman you mentioned. I believe I was speaking to his son the other day, who phoned me from London. He was chewing my ear, you could say. I've identified most of the core users, and at an upcoming working group meeting that we'll have in the coming week or so, then we will start to discuss quite a targeted response to help those people, because even with all the best will in the world, we're not going to snap our fingers and go from one service straight into another.
I do believe that there is a need for this bus. However, I'd be very nervous to put anything out to the general public in any format until a lot more of the issues have been dealt with, because the general public are going to have no idea of the issues, the legalities, the insurance, the things that make it difficult. I think they'll just think you can snap your fingers like your mayor, so you'll get a new bus and that will be done. I think we have to be very careful to not go public with it until there is something that is fairly concrete.
Ryan, please.
What we're trying to do is get a bus service which works on a totally different basis than the one we had before, which taken together will give a better service to everybody that chooses to use it. So it's very difficult to describe to them why we're making the change without being rather too specific. What we're trying to say is you will get a better service by considering being involved in this new form of bus arrangement, which is not rocket science, because it's as we've said, it's exists elsewhere in the country, and so there is a template for doing it. I think we're not starting from square one. There is a template for us to work forward, in terms of getting trustees to run it, drivers, etc. And you can build an organisation around the enthusiasm of a few individuals, which is hopefully what we will uncover.
Julie, please.
I would like to add that I feel that public engagement is really important to very awful lot of people who might not even be aware that none of that is going on. In short. But we can actually gain more ideas from members of the public and more knowledge surrounding the issue. There is a course that's running from September called Trust the People, and what it is it gives people tools to hold a people's assembly and to actually engage more with the public and make it radically inclusive, to bring ideas together from everybody, so everybody can together, and to be able to really engage and listen. So it would, I've already facilitated people's assemblies, but I haven't done it for a long time. So I'm enrolling on it on the 27th. I can send them the links for it. It's free, runs for 5 weeks. But it would be a good idea, because I'm not on Facebook, and I think there's an awful lot of people who are on Facebook, and there's an awful lot of people who don't write the Chronicle. So there are ways of engaging with people that don't focus narrowly down those links. So I'd just like to think about it.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, we are well aware of the limitations of Facebook. It's kind of unfortunate in this day and age that it's sort of it's a bit of a go-to communication tool. But there are, on the other hand, there are 3,000 people within the Ventnor group, so it does have a good reach. but hopefully with the additional tools that the clerk has at his disposal, the email distribution list and potentially inside the Chronicle as well, and with those things in combination, that call can go out further. I'd just like to respond to the point you made. I absolutely take on board what you're saying about the complexity of running a service. It is a big deal. Even running a small voluntary service is a big deal. It is complicated, and we are really looking for a champion to come out of the community. But we don't know how to find that champion unless they put their hand up. I did, when I was speaking to the gentleman who started the Fit Bus, this is an honest quotation. He did say to me that one mistake he made, he wished he'd spoken to the public earlier, because they did around about, I can't remember what he said, around about 6, 7, 8 months of research initially, but it wasn't until they actually spoke to the public and got the public into the room and started having those meetings, it was at that point that everything really flourished. So.
We had thought of, we drafted some wording, hadn't we?
Yes.
We would use as the basis for going out to the general public. Is this the right forum to agree that wording? Because I know our clerk was concerned that it needed to be put in a way which didn't indicate that the town council was going to be running this, but merely kick-starting it. That's the important thing.
Yes, so the wording that we discussed, I came up with, it was distributed, it was edited, we bounced backwards and forwards a couple of times. Finally, it was agreed. Well, I'm very happy for it to be distributed again. Finally, it was agreed between members of the working group, which includes the clerk and Alison. So we're happy. We couldn't include it with the paper because then it would be in public. So which is a little bit of a paradox there. Chicken and egg. Yeah. But this is the direction of travel as the working group see. So I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder, and hopefully the support and the trust from the other councillors that we're proposing. Yeah, so proposal from Councillor Jeffries and seconded Councillor Cooper. Okay, I will distribute it one more time to you guys. You can have another look. So I know a few weeks have passed, so I'll be very happy to accept any further comments, of course. Okay, item number 9. So, as you're almost certainly aware, the Isle of Wight Council is consulting on the draft island planning strategy. As you can see in the background that David has provided for us, there has been a very significant cut since the last planning strategy in the number of houses that are planned for the island. And as I understand, they're now trying to push this even lower, this target down to 300. The pertinent points for us, of course, are contained in the second part, with the 2 references to the town. One, the target of 10 houses over the next 15 years in Ventnor, which I think is modest, yeah. Maybe a little low. I wouldn't be surprised if they find space for 12 or 13 houses. But yeah, but that's the current target, is for 10 houses in the next 15 years. And also, quite excitingly or pleasingly, the area just behind this site here has been mentioned again. The allocation for employment described as a brownfield site, extending to an area of 0.7 hectares. Councillors will be aware that there are some draft plans to site some light industrial units there, and as we've discussed before, that would potentially be a wonderful thing for the council, and I look forward to hearing a further update about that. It's mostly in the hands of the Isle of Wight Council, so it will come along. The recommendation, as you can see, is to establish a working group with the clerk, being delegated authority to submit to the consultation the group's response. I would very much like to have an input into any discussion that we have looking forward about planning matters in Ventnor. I should inform all members that I've spoken in the last couple of days to Michael Lilly, who chairs the Isle of Wight Planning Committee, and today I spoke to Paul Fuller, who is portfolio holder for planning at Isle of Wight Council. And my concern, and I'm sure the concern is shared by others here, is very different to the number of houses that are being bought, that are being built in Ventnor. My concern is the nature of the housing stock in Ventnor and the sheer number of holiday lets and second homes. It's quite difficult to put an estimate on what it is, but it's increasing constantly. So the purpose of my phone call to Councillor Michael Lilly and to Paul Fuller was to ask if such comments can be submitted as part of any response the Town Council gives. And he's assured me that there's other parish councils have already submitted comments, and they are mentioning things like second homes, like holiday lets, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to open it up to members.
I'd like to start actually on that one. Certainly I'd like to go on the committee, but I think we need to press the fact we're so short of affordable houses. It's unbelievable. The last target, we're over 50% down on affordable housing that should have been built. So I think we need to work on it. I'd go along with you with a lot of these lets now are summer lets. We've lost a lot of flats in there, and they're terrible actually, really bad. But certainly I'd like to sit on the committee and see what we can do with it. Please.
Mark, did you want to come in?
I echo Councillor Tingood's comments too. I'd certainly like to sit on the committee. We've lost such. During the campaign, the election campaign, where you get the electoral roll, looking on there, and you can see they sort of like their second homes or holiday lets by the address to it. Most of them, a lot of them were mainland addresses, even though I had some from Spain, France, etc., where the address was. And off the top of my head, I reckon there must have been at least 250 to 300 holiday homes just on the electoral roll.
Which is just that alone is 10% of the housing stock here. We do, it's in the region of 2,500 homes in Ventnor. Steve, please.
Stephen, there's a question I wanted to ask about this. I mean, I too would be interested in observing, but perhaps I'll ask the question first. It depends on what the remit and scope of this working group would actually be. I'm currently working elsewhere in another capacity on to trying to deal with this, and part of that is about central government taxation. And that would be a more progressive and aggressive tax on people that have got second homes that are using them for holiday purposes, simply because I'm thinking of the environment. It's okay to keep saying we'll build. Okay, well that has an impact on the environment. Okay, so there is an alternative to that, and the alternative is taxation. Okay, so without getting into too much party political rankings, etc., which is not what I would want to do anyway in any arena. It's just that's the question. What is the scope? What is the remit? Are we just going to look at Ventnor? Are we going to look at the island as a whole? What is the scope and remit that we're actually looking at?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it would be to reply to the draft island planning strategy, okay. And absolutely we can comment on island-wide matters. I think it makes sense for us. Our concentration should be on the local matter. And when you mention the remit, from the conversations I had today, from particularly Paul Fuller, he was very comfortable with any comments that we wish to submit. Of course, it might be like planning comments, and many of the things that we say might become immaterial and may not be considered, but we can but try. Please, Brian.
Yes, I think it's a great idea for us to get together because we know really what we want for Ventnor, and we can express those comments in lay terms, if you like. But I would like our comments to go in front of a planning consultant so that they go to the Isle of Wight Council in a form that they can use, i.e. with planning speak in it. Because I think it's very important that we don't say, oh, we want more houses here, we want more houses there. I think we ought to express it in a way that they can turn that into valid changes in their strategy, because it's been expressed as a planning consultant would. We both know somebody who is a planning consultant, and I'm sure that they could give us advice on how to express it in the most positive and constructive way, based upon what we want for Ventnor. Because I think there's a danger if everybody, parish council says, oh, I think that's too many and I think that's not enough, and I'd like to see more of this. The planners have got to be able to use it in a form to change that sort of legalised document.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, because the next stage, when the planners in Newport receive the documents, then they will hopefully compile, take consideration of the comments that they receive, and then the document they themselves produce then has to go in front of a government inspectorate. So they can't put in any old thing that comes from the town and parish councils. But yes, okay, yeah. As you can see here, the comments have to be in by October the 1st. So we have quite a tight window if we wish to go forward with that, and also get the services of a planning consultant. Okay. One further comment I should have mentioned. Paul Fuller said that he would be prepared to meet us, and his diary is very full, but he would be prepared to meet us. I mean, hopefully before we prepare this, or before we submit this. If he's not able to do it before we submit this, he's very happy to meet us to discuss Ventnor matters anyway, and we do that. So in this case, I'm looking for. So Brian, you would like to sit on this group?
Yeah, I'd be pleased to. Yes.
Okay. To myself, please.
Yeah, I've got you and Mark and Steve. Okay. Okay, then in that case, I'm looking for a proposer and to propose the recommendation that the town council is recommended to establish a working group.
I'll propose that, please.
Okay, and seconder, and councillor. Item number 10, town clerk's report, please, Dave.
It needn't keep you very long, Chair. The usual list of things which have happened is definitely to go into the record, really, and don't need any decisions, as you know. So we have welcomed Nigel, who's with us tonight. Nigel Slater Bishop as our Business Development Officer. He's found his way into and through the organisation very quickly and very effectively, and is welcomed by everybody he's met. So may continue. And he's based, for those of you who want to meet him, in the Green Rooms Community Development Office, along with Tony McCarthy and Jordan Royal, who share that space. We're currently advertising for a new administrator to replace Morgan on his move to another career direction. As the report says, we endeavoured to use the apprenticeship route again because it's worked so well twice for the town council now. But we were warned by the training provider that recruitment is proving difficult. So there's a government scheme, and they have to tell us that anybody we consider appointing qualifies for the government scheme. We only received 3 applications, 2 of which didn't qualify, and the other didn't have the necessary experience. So we're now advertising for an administrator. The closing date is on Thursday of this week. Then the day, just to record the highly successful event that Tony and his team of volunteers and staff and members delivered on the said date in Ventnor Park. And the Community Development Group is proposing to agree to ask the Town Council in due course to agree that Ventnor Day 2022 takes place on the 2nd of July. That will come back to you at some point. New benches, remarkable work by Ventnor Community Shed in producing very high quality benches and having 4 of them are in place. Yeah. So they've done really good work with that. We're very grateful. And Martin Rayner and Jill Warren get a particular mention for the results achieved. Ventnor sign, thanks to our maintenance manager Brian Roberts leading the refurbishment of that, with volunteers assisting in the trimming and tidying up, and the actual painting being carried out by a local decorating company called Top Coat, who made no charge for that work. I was keen to record the programme of busking arranged by the Deputy Mayor in Springhill Garden, with 2 more weeks to run, and the dates of the working groups, as usual, Chair, and that's it.
Thank you very much to you and the staff and all the councillors who've been involved with the many activities in the last month.
Yes, please.
Yes, very good. Yeah. Well done. Special mention to the Deputy Mayor for putting on the for doing so many bits and pieces. Item number 11 on the agenda is the exclusion of the public and press. In view of the confidential nature of the following item, it is resolved under the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings 1960 Act to exclude the public and press, whilst the next item is under discussion, as it is of a confidential nature. But that is a decision that has to be made by the council. So do we have a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Proposed by Councillor Lucas and seconded by Councillor Warren.